All right, so again, we're going to look at complex fractions, and starting with example 5 on page 586. So here's the problem right here. So if you look at this right here, you can see this is a complex fraction. What does that mean? Well, it's a fraction made up of a whole bunch of fractions. All right. In the numerator, we got two fractions added together, and then we got another fraction in the denominator, and we got to try to simplify this thing. So the first thing I want to point out is that, let me get off to the side here a little bit. The first thing I want to point out is that this division bar right here is really the same as or that fraction bar is really the same as a division symbol. So what you're looking at on this one then is you're really looking at, you've got 2 over x plus x over 4 divided by x plus 1 over x. All right, maybe I'll put some parentheses around here just so you can see it like that. So it's really that numerator divided by that denominator. So when you divide two fractions, what do you got to do? Christian, you got to keep that mask on back there, all right? When you divide two fractions, what do you guys do? I think back to basic math. If you divide by a fraction, you do what?
Keep some split.
Yeah. Yep. So you keep the numerator, right, in this case, and then so it's keep, change, flip. So you're going to keep that first fraction, that was the numerator, or the sum of those two fractions, that's the numerator. You're going to change the division to a multiplication, and then you're going to flip the second fraction over. So keep, change, flip. So what this really looks like then is this is really 2 over x plus x over 4 times the reciprocal of that second fraction, which would be x over x plus 1. Like that. And then really the only other thing you can do on this one is you can get a common denominator for that. That's what we were doing in this section, right? So what you can do is you can get a common denominator for these two fractions and add them together. So what would be your common denominator for x and 4? What would be your common denominator for x and 4? Come on, got a whole classroom full of people, nobody knows? Kyle, you know?
4x.
Yeah, just 4x. Yeah, so we're going to multiply the first fraction by this one's denominator over itself. So that's going to look like we're going to multiply by 4 over 4 right here. Again, 4 over 4 is 1, so we're really not changing that fraction. We're just changing the way that it looks so that it has a common denominator. And then we're going to multiply this fraction right here by this fraction on the left denominator. So we're going to multiply that one by x over x. Maybe I can, let's see, where could I do that? Maybe I can squeeze that in right here. So I'm going to multiply that one by x over x. Like that. All right, so now that I've done that, I know my common denominator is 4 times x. So I'll keep that. I always keep my common denominator. That goes on the bottom. And then in the numerator, I've just got 4 times 2 right here. So that's 8. Plus, and then right here, I've got x times x. So that's x squared. And that's still times x over the quantity x plus 1. Now, the only thing you can do to this from here is there's one thing that'll cancel out. Can you guys tell me what will cancel?
X.
Yeah, that x will cancel. You've got, let me rewrite this part so you can see it better. Get that 4 out of there. Okay. So you've got, right in between these two right here, you have a multiplication. Because you have that multiplication right there, that allows you to cancel this x with this x. So you're cross-canceling. And then to finish this up, to multiply fractions, then you just multiply straight across the top. and straight across the bottom. And again, if something cancels out, it's a 1. So if we multiply straight across the top, we're just going to get 8 plus x squared times 1. So that's just, I'll write it as, I'll write it as x squared plus 8. And in the denominator, we've got a 4 times the quantity x plus 1. And again, don't bother multiplying out that denominator, just leave it like that. And that's it. That's all you can do with that one. So there's one example. We're going to do 2 more. All right, you ready? So now you can see here, when they worked it out, they said that you could multiply out that denominator right here and make it 4x plus 4, but I wouldn't do that. I would leave it like this. All right, so let's look at down below here. I don't think we need to do all 3 of these. Let's look at 5a and 5b. Let's see if I can get a little more room on the screen here. There we go. All right, so we're going to do the same kind of thing. Let's see if I can kind of work this all in one step a little bit for you guys. So you guys should recognize this right here. That denominator. That denominator right there, that is x squared minus 1 squared. So that is the difference of 2 squares. So that is going to factor into the quantity x plus 1 times the quantity of x minus 1. All right. So let's see if we can set this up. So again, we're going to keep the first fraction, which is the numerator of that complex fraction. So that is going to be x plus 1 over, and I'm going to write the factored form, okay? So I'm going to take this and I'm going to write this down here. That's going to be over the quantity x plus 1 times the quantity x minus 1. And then we're going to change this. Remember, this fraction bar right here means division. So instead of division, we're going to change it to multiplication. So it's going to be times, and then we're going to take that bottom fraction that we're dividing by, and we're going to flip that one over. Take the reciprocal of it. So that's going to become x minus 1 over x. Now, you guys tell me what cancels out now. Yep, good. The x minus 1. Again, you're not going in here and picking off the x's individually. You're saying this whole quantity, x minus 1, cancels that whole quantity, x minus 1. And then what else cancels? Well, not just the x individually. Remember, you can't cancel things if there's a plus or a minus in between them. Only when there's multiplication. But there is something that cancels there. What do you got?
X plus 1.
Yeah, right here. You've got x plus 1 over itself, right? Well, that's what this really means right here when you cancel this. It means that you had x minus 1 over x minus 1. Anything divided by itself is 1. So yeah, so this one would also cancel out right here, the x plus 1 and the x plus 1. Again, the whole quantity cancels itself. As long as there's one of those quantities in the numerator and one of those quantities on the denominator. Anything divided by itself is 1. And remember, if it cancels out, it's really a 1. So now you're going to multiply your fractions. So you're going to multiply straight across the numerator and straight across the denominator. Well, what's left in the numerator? What if everything cancels out? What do you end up with?
1 over x.
Yeah, in the numerator here, remember, if it cancels out, it's a 1. So that's a 1, and that's a 1. So in the numerator, if you multiply straight across the top, you got 1 times 1. Well, that is just 1. And then in the denominator, this is a 1, and that's a 1. So you got 1 times x, which is just x. So your answer for that one is just 1 over x. All right, well, let's do 5B and then we'll call it good for today. Just a short little mini lesson here. So we're going to do the same kind of thing again. We are going to take the numerator fraction. So we've got 20 over the quantity x minus 1. And we're going to multiply that by the reciprocal of that denominator fraction. Before I do, though, I want you to note that this denominator right here, that factors. That one factors. There's a greatest common factor greater than 1 in that one. That would be 3. So that's going to factor into 3 times the quantity x minus 1. Like that. So now when I flip that over and multiply by it, I'm going to end up with 3 times the quantity x minus 1 over 6. Now what cancels? Good, yeah. Those quantities cancel for sure. So that quantity x minus 1 cancels with that quantity x minus 1. But then you can also cross-cancel with the 6 and the 20. Remember cross-canceling when you were doing basic like multiplication of fractions when you were a little kid? Basically what you do is you say, what's the greatest common factor for 6 and 20? What's the largest number that divides evenly into 6 and 20? 2, yeah. So you divide each of those by 2. So I'll show you this with a little note here. So what you're doing here is you're really, when you cross-cancel, you're dividing that by 2, and you're dividing the 6 by 2, like that. So now what do you got left? Well, you got the numerator of the fraction on the left is 20 divided by 2. That's a 10, right? Everything canceled out on the bottom. That's a 1. And then on the fraction on the right there, the numerator, this is just 3 times 1 right here. So that's just 3. And in the denominator, you got 6 divided by 2. That's also 3. Well, what happens with a 3 over 3? Yeah, that cancels out too. That's 1, right? That's 1 right there. So you just end up with 10 over 1 times 1. Well, that's just 10. So your answer is 10. And so then that concludes the little mini lesson for today, and then your assignment is to finish the bottom of that worksheet, okay? So let me stop my recording here before I forget.